Hey friends and family, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video I think will be very interesting for many of you, and for those of you who are learning tarot or just feel like doing a reading today but you just can't think of a topic. This might be right up your alley. Now, a lot of times people think of tarot reading as fortune telling, and I guess, to a certain extent, if you request information from a tarot reader, and like myself, for example, I'll just use myself, for example. Okay, so you come to me for a tarot reading, and you don't necessarily want to know how something's going to play out, but you do want to know what you can do to make it play out or to get the best possible outcome for yourself, right? And that's how I would orient the reading, because I don't really do fortune telling. I try to give my client the responsibility and the privilege of working out a situation. So it becomes more like, here are some ideas that you could consider in order to get a best possible outcome. And if by chance you take heed and you follow a few of the suggestions and it turns out the way you wanted it, that might be seen as fortune telling, but it's not really, right? It's really more about having tried something different and getting a different result. It's no more fortune telling than having experience at something and seeing a toddler going toward the stove and about to touch a flame and saying, "No, don't touch that, you'll get hurt." It's not that I have powers, divine powers. It's just that I have experience and I have an understanding. I've been on the planet long enough to know that, nothing good is going to come of that. So try to avoid it, right? So I guess it's the same kind of thing with readings. I get a question, I get a set of cards, and I interpret it to the question and to the person asking the question, right? Okay, all that. But today's has nothing to do with that. Today's reading is taking objects that have belonged to other people. Perhaps you bought them at a yard sale. Perhaps you found it. Perhaps you bought it at an antique store. So the item has history, but it's not your family history. It's not coming from anyone in your line. And you just want to know, what was the energy behind this? Like, is this a safe object to have in my house? Now, truth be told, I buy a lot of things that way. I buy jewelry that way. In fact, one of the items that I'm going to do a reading on today is on a beautiful ring that I adore. I'm not wearing it today. And I would like to get to the bottom of it, right? I have a couple other items that I bought in locations where I have a little bit of information, but I don't know, or I'm piecing together what I think I know about the item in my head. So I'm one of these people who I never worry when I buy something secondhand. I've bought a few, not too many, but a few tarot decks secondhand. Most of the time I prefer to buy them, brand new. But I have a certain percentage where if I'm going on vacation or something like that, and there's a little hole in the wall metaphysical shop and they're selling somebody's decks from, somebody passed away, and the family is just trying to sell the decks from the 70s or 60s or something like that, you can score some cool stuff, right? But I never concern myself with the energy of an object like that. And I know a lot of you are going to scold me, and you probably are right. But I kind of feel like if I hold the item and I just think about, just for a second, I get a sense of whether or not I want to wear it or use it. So, but, some people might sage it, right away. And I don't sage things usually. I only will sage a location if I feel that, some of the vibes are getting out of hand, But for the most part, I welcome whatever energy it is part of that object. And if I'm proven wrong, then I just get rid of it. But I've never had to get rid of anything. All right, so I have this beautiful ring. It's a color changing garnet. It's not a valuable stone. In fact, I don't know if color changing garnets are natural or if they're man-made. Now I know this ring, I could see inside that I think it's written that it's 10 karat gold. So yeah, I think it says 10 karat. So it's a low grade gold, you know. I don't think they make bands less gold than 10 karat unless they do another metal altogether, like silver or whatever. But it's got an old style, right? It's just got this old-fashioned style. Now, I bought it at an estate, so I know that it was somebody who passed away and it was being sold as part of their estate. And I just loved it. I love the color. You know, in natural light, as we have here, it's a pinkish, right? It's real pink. But if I put it under artificial light, it turns like a deep purple blue. And it was, I'm sure, intended to represent the qualities of the Alexandrite stone, which is I think the original birthstone for June was Alexandrite. But Alexandrite became increasingly rare, and I'm sure this is not an Alexandrite, because if it were, it wouldn't be in 10 karat gold settings, right? But they became so incredibly rare that they had to give it another stone, you know, because you can't get it, you know. So I think pearl became the new stone for June, and there might be another one that they've used for June too. So some months just have interchangeable things, you know, because if the stone is too rare, then they have to maybe give it an alternative. I'm not sure, but at any rate, so I have this beautiful ring. I usually wear it in the winter months, and in the summer months I wear another ring. I wear this in the winter because it's, you know, I don't know, it's just juicy and I just love it. Okay, so I think I would like to know about the individual this ring belonged to before me. It's 10 karat, so my intellect tells me 10 karat was probably introduced 60s maybe, I don't know. So it's not like, you know, it's vintage, but it's not necessarily, you know, worth anything because of its long ago heritage. It's just a piece of costume jewelry, probably from the 1960s. Somebody got it. I will find out if it was a gift. And I just want to know, what's the vibe of this person? What was this person like? Okay, I have it back on my finger. Maybe it'll help me out a little bit. So I went into my meditative place and I asked about the owner of this ring. Maybe I will try to do 2 rows of 3 and get a sense of the nature of their personality, you know, what they were like. And also maybe the relationship with the person that gave them the ring, or if they bought it for themselves, or anything else that comes through that's relevant. So it's an open-ended question, so that I'm not asking necessarily a specific question, but I'm asking for information that will come through regarding the item. So let's pull a couple cards. So 8 is exponentially larger than 4. We have of the heart of the home. It was a gift from a loved one, that's my guess. 9 of batons. Maybe for a very social event. Maybe for a big thing, you know, maybe for the culmination of something. So maybe for an anniversary, or maybe for the birth. Well, I don't know about birth, but maybe for, an anniversary or a birthday or something that you would celebrate for. So we have 4 and 8 is 12, and then 12 and 9 is 21, the World card. So maybe it could be suggestive of, I'm not going to lay the World card out because I'm going to do another row, but the World card could be suggestive of a birth, right? If you see it as the shape, right? So maybe in celebration of a birth of a loved one, a child or something like that. So, okay, now let's see if we have more information. 3, another domestic number. Suit, rather. The Emperor, okay, maybe given to her by her husband, her partner. And the Ace of Swords falls under the 9 of Batons, right? And they're 2 very assertive suits, which suggest male energy. So it was given to this individual by a male, perhaps her husband. The other cards are cards of domestic world and a heart. So, and then the quint for this row would be 3 and 4 is 7, and 1 and 8. So that would be justice, right? 3, 7, and 1 is 8. So we have justice, and I forget what I set up here. The world card. So justice and the world card. Maybe something going well, right? Maybe she had a case and it ended well. Maybe she had been working on something and it ended well. That could be, and that could be another idea for what the occasion for the ring was given. So that was fun, and I'm going to try it again. So if you want to hang with me, I'll do a few more items. So for 1 year of my life, I lived in Kalispell, Montana. And while I was there, I took advantage of checking out the local stuff. And of course, when I say local, it means I'd be willing to drive 5 hours to the nearest something. And they had these old gold mines. Okay? They had these gold mines that people went in to get rich, and they had a big mountain of silver, right? So we call them gold mines. And I don't remember by name which one I went to, but I went to at least 2 or 3. And there were a lot of apothecary stores, because really the only people who got rich in the gold mines really were the people who had stores and had shops. And a lot of those individuals were Asian, because they came over and they found their opportunity in setting up shops for people who might get lucky and might have a few extra dollars if they did get lucky, or just, fulfill a need. These guys needed, they needed things, they needed to have toiletries, etc., etc. Now this, from what I understand, was either a shop key or the key to a particular cabinet of medicine. I get this, my impression was that this came from an apothecary. Now, I've never been told that, but it was just my feeling about it when I held it in my hand for the first time, that I felt like it was like, part of an apothecary. Now, some of you who know keys, and this key is probably, I guess, 100 years old, right? If you could identify if that's a door key or a cabinet key, it identifies whatever it was by the number 15. Ooh, the devil, my goodness. So maybe it's for vice, some kind of vice. Just looking at the clue on the card. Just looking for the clues on the item. But it could just be, it was just drawer number 15. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was vice or anything like that. I'm just sort of like putting my own 2 cents on it in having an understanding of like what numbers mean. Now, so this is different than the rest of the chain. This is different. So this looks like a clip. Maybe it clipped onto something. So maybe it was not hanging from a drawer, obviously, if you wouldn't put the key right by the drawer if you're trying to keep it safe. So maybe this would have been worn on a belt. Oh, this probably would have been clipped onto a belt maybe. So the shop owner perhaps, or the person who did the shop would have worn this maybe. Now, why am I going through all this without putting it on, doing it with the cards first? Well, I want to have transparency in showing the things that I could deduce before I get involved in reading. And I do this, all the time. I have a sense of, I understand a situation. I speak as much of the situation as I understand, and then the information to come through will be in addition to what I think I know, or to correct me, So it's important that that the context of where this came from. So I'm going to do 6 cards. So let me go into my meditative place, concentrate on this item, which I will surround. Yeah, I'll use it to surround the cards to give us that energy. Let's put the 15 in view. And I'll get started. Okay, I went into my meditative place and I concentrated and I asked the universe to tell us anything in addition to what I've, mentioned could be it. Now, I'd like to know specifically who it belonged to. What was the nature of the person who used this key, who held on to this key. So that's really what I'm asking about, the energy of the individual. Wow. Okay. 8 of coins. Wow. Okay, so it was definitely a merchant. This card here makes me think that it's, like the boss person or, the person in charge. Now, this obviously isn't God, but they're being called up to be held accountable for something. So this individual was a person with a certain amount of power in the world of money, right? So this person was a merchant. Now, I'm going to do the quint to see if it can give us additional information about the person, besides that they were a merchant, which we already kind of know. So we have 20, 8, 28. I guess there's no number on this card. 28 and 5, 2, 4, 6, 7, 28 and 7 would be 35. So let me deduct 22 and we'll get the quint for this. Okay, I realized I didn't want to pull the death card. That would be the card here, but I don't want to pull it because I still want to put down more cards. So I'm just going to do for the second part. I didn't have to do any more shuffling, but I just want more information. So this does seem like that clearly it was for the store. It was somebody who had some authority. Maybe it was the owner. But definitely somebody who handled money, which we already can know. It verifies what we think we know. The Sun, maybe it was a lucrative shop. The Fool, somebody who was willing to take a chance and go into this godforsaken town and set up a shop. An adventurous person. Let's see what the next card is. The 2 of batons. The quint for this row was the devil. Was the death card. So I'll pull that. So we have 19 and 0 and 2, 21. So we have the world and we have the death card as additional cards, to help explain a little bit more about each of these rows. Okay, so in addition to the cards that I already discussed, in this top row is the quint for that row is the death card. So maybe it was under lock and key because it was deadly. Maybe there was just something that was dangerous, that could cause harm, right? So maybe it was for an apothecary. I was never told that it was for an apothecary, but I always, when I held it in my hand, got that feeling that it was for an apothecary. And also, if you want to take it further in looking at the cards, these could be seen as tablets, right? They could be seen as pills, some kind of pill or, Now it was, I wonder if it really would have been in pill form. It probably would have been more in powder. But pill form is the modern rendition for us to think of a substance, right? That might have been in a pharmacy. Now, the world card here suggests to me, if this is describing the nature of this individual, a happy person, person who's, bright and takes advantage of opportunity, sees an opportunity and goes for it, right? And I think that this individual had a lucrative, career as long as it lasted while he was in that location. And it might have been a woman. I'm not saying it couldn't have been a woman. So that's a possibility, but the likelihood of it having been a man is just greater. So for giggles and grins, let's do 13 and 21 and get our quint for the entire spread. Now, I could have stopped after the 6 cards, but I wanted more information, so I opted for additional 2. And I'm greedy for information, so I'm going to do another quint card. But that's my limit. After 3, after 1 for each row, and then the overall, I stop. I don't go beyond that. But I'm just greedy for information, and my understanding with the universe and how I do these things is that the universe knows how I do it, how I roll. And so that's why sometimes I vary in what extra cards I pull. Well, this falls under the category of I'm sorry I asked, because look at what the quint card is. The gallows. And every place, every gold mine I visited, I'm pretty sure had a gallows where they dealt with somebody who wasn't on the up and up. So it definitely falls under the category of I wish I didn't see this, or I wish I didn't know this. And, sometimes tarot makes you consider things that aren't palatable, right? So perhaps, despite the person being a happy, bright, sunny individual who did a lucrative life, we do see the death card here. In addition to how how I interpreted the death card in that row, which I consider it to be, I wouldn't change it even with the addition of this card. But in addition, when you see the combination, it's like something dangerous occurred, centered on this individual. Something dangerous occurred. And so despite having done well, it was a position of enormous responsibility, I think. And there was some hell to pay regarding this key. This key has seen some hell to pay, Very, very, very interesting. And I have one more item that I'd like to do in this reading. Now, when I was a young girl, I was raised in an area of Pennsylvania, which the ancestors of which, were related to William Penn, or they were William Penn's son or nephew or something like that. And so that property that my town was on was land granted to the Penn family. So it's old, the land is as old as the earth, so yeah. But I mean, it wasn't as though, it wasn't populated until, modern developers came and plowed the land and put up our, homes, right? This had history. My neighborhood had history before any of us even was aware that there was anything there. Now, I was a kid and I was in the backyard, and actually probably in the woods behind my house, because my house was surrounded by woods on 2 sides. The front yard was facing the street and the side yard was facing neighbors, but the one side and the back butt up against this woods that was as big as the whole block. And so that's where I was. And I recognized it when I got it as a pencil sharpener. And that is the original razor blade, right? I mean, this is old. And this probably belonged to a child. I guess they put a string through this and wore it, their pencil sharpener for school. Now, maybe it wasn't a child's object. Maybe it was an adult's, but it was somebody who needed to keep a pencil sharpened. And I was always fascinated by it, and I've saved this. There's another item I probably saved in a dish over 50 years, you know. I've had this a long time, since I was just a little girl. And the pencil shavings or whatever's in there is original. It's nothing, I never used it to sharpen a pencil. This is all original stuff. Okay, so I went into my meditative place asking for information on the owner of this thing. Was it a child who lost it and was devastated and cried and they lost their special thing? You know, that must have been a special thing to have a pencil sharpener, you know, if you were a child. Or it could have been just an adult and was easily replaceable and it meant nothing. Ah, La Batelier. Is this an indication of that it was a businessman of some sort? You know, I think of the, you know, Batelier as a businessman of sorts, you know, somebody who came through town conning people, you know. Let's get more clues. Wow, the star. Dang. And 3. Wow. Wow. So maybe this was like a high-end item, you know, because I get the sense that the star is something, in this context, maybe it's like a lofty thing. So, yeah, I need to see more cards. I'm kind of not aware. All right, so not a child, probably, an adult, a young person, a young adult. Oh, then we do have a child. Wow. So maybe it was used by a few people. 5 of Cups. So the end of each row is a cup, a 3 and a 5. Wow, this is very interesting. Isn't this something? So I think this item was used by more than one person. Perhaps the adult used it for business accounting or, you know, keeping track of something. I can kind of see the magician in this context being somebody who works magic with numbers, right? Maybe it was given to, maybe it was passed down like heritage, right? Like passed down to a youngster who lost it. Oh, how sad. Because we see like card of abundance, of like growth, you know, and then a little bit of like 5 being a disruptive number. Like, you know, sometimes it can be equated if there's an emotional upset, because it is the 5 of Cups. So it caused emotional upset. So it was owned by someone who was older, maybe an older brother, maybe a father, and it was given or passed down, or it was a special gift to a youngster, and then they lost it maybe. Oh, man. So let me get the quints on this, because I just want to see how it all ended. Okay, I have to shift all the cards a little bit so we get them all in the picture. So here we have the Pope ending this row, which to me suggested father, son, or big brother kind of thing, dynamic. And then this kind of validates that for me. So it was probably father, son kind of thing, because I'm taking this literally to mean le papa, right? The father. And then this top row seems to be more about the legacy of it, you know, that it was a special item as part of a heritage. Maybe it was something that the child felt it had like a piece of pride, you know, it was something that was very special. And then the final quintessential card is justice. So that in addition to like having a lineage or passing down or something like that. Now, maybe it's not such a big deal to pass down something as trivial as a pencil sharpener, but it might have been a special thing that, a child had that they were quite proud of. And, it doesn't spell inheritance, but the rest of the cards kind of suggest an inherited thing, or if the father was still alive, just gave it to the kid just for fun, but the kid cherished it and held on to it, right? And it was special. And so, this could also be seen in that regard. It's just being part of a legal process of being given something, or maybe it was part of an estate. So that's what I think. Or it could have to do with the line of business, There were courthouses. Wow, there's, that where I grew up is the county seat for the whole county, right? So it could have been like an attorney's, maybe was used for an attorney's office, because there are a lot of legal things that occurred on that area, for sure. Wow, that's interesting. So I guess it would have been connected to somebody who's, was a lawyer or something, which is interesting because, that's a little sleight of hand there too. So it might have been, used by someone whose profession required a certain sleight of hand. In addition to what I've already said, it kind of makes me wonder if there was like some, attached to some kind of a lawyer's office or something like that. Very interesting. A lot of fun. Let me flip the camera. I hope that this video was fun for you guys and giving you ideas, of how to use the cards. You don't have to use the cards for the normal mundane things like, does he love me? Does he love me not kind of thing? Or, tarot is insightful in so many other ways. Now, of course, there's no way to know if any of this is true. There's no way to know. I could be completely wrong on everything, but I could be right too. And based on what you already know when you go into it, and you should express that you kind of surmise this much, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm surmising this much, because the more information you have, the clearer the information coming in is going to be, right? So I hadn't remembered or mentioned it when I was telling you about my community, but it was, it's the county seat, it's got a big law presence. And some of those first homes were all for attorneys and judges, and it's when that hit me, when I finally understood the Justice card, I was like, it was connected to that aspect of the community. Got it, especially with the bachelor in the picture. I get it. Anyway, I thought this was a lot of fun, and I hope you do too. And until next time, friends, peace and stay well.